Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're plunging headfirst into the fascinating world of renewable energy finance, and specifically, a startup out of Estonia that's really making waves. It's called Soldera.
That's right. We've looked at, well, quite a few sources articles, LinkedIn profiles, even a video interview transcript about them.
Yeah, good stack. And our mission here is simple. Give you the shortcut to getting up to speed on this. We're going to unpack what Soldera actually does, why it's, so important right now, and understand these things called guarantees of origin GOs. What are they?
Crucial piece of the puzzle.
Definitely. And how Soldera helps green energy generators boost their income apparently quite significantly. Plus, we'll get a feel for the founders, their journey, the people behind it all.
It's a really interesting story combining tech, finance, and that green transition.
Absolutely. Get ready for some surprising facts, I think, about how tech is trying to streamline this whole process. Okay, let's unpack this.
So let's start with the absolute core, the things Soldera is built around. Guarantees of origin, GOs. Our sources define them pretty clearly. They're certificates, basically electronic certificates, that verify and track renewable electricity production, specifically in Europe.
Okay, verify and track. How does that work in practice?
Well, think of it like this. The power grid is like this giant pool, right? You draw electricity. You don't really know where that specific electron came from. Was it wind, solar, coal?
Right, it's all mixed together. Anonymous electrons.
Exactly. GOs solve that anonymity. For every megawatt hour of renewable energy a producer, say a wind farm, generates and sells to the grid, they get issued one GO certificate. And then on the other side, if a company or even you as a consumer buy a green electricity tariff, they need to match that consumption by retiring or using up one GO.
Ah, so it's like proof of origin. This megawatt hour I used is matched by a megawatt hour of verified renewable generation somewhere.
Precisely. And here's the fascinating part, their value. They prove the source, sure, but they can be traded completely separately from the actual physical electricity.
Separately. So the wind farm sells the power, and then they also sell this certificate.
Yep. It creates a totally separate additional revenue stream for them. It's not just about the price of power anymore.
Okay, that's interesting. So who's buying these certificates and why, if they're not buying the actual power with it?
Good question. Lots of buyers.
Yeah.
Mainly big companies. Why? Well, often it's the only legal way for them to claim they're using renewable energy from the grid, especially in Europe.
Ah, for their ESG goals, environmental, social governance reporting.
Exactly that. It's essential for ESG, for corporate sustainability reports. Regulations often mandate it. And sometimes, like one source mentioned for Estonia, it's even tied to government subsidies. You might need proof of renewable energy use via GOs to qualify for, say, an electric vehicle grant.
Right, okay. So regulatory compliance, corporate image, sometimes subsidies. And this isn't just a European thing, is it? I've heard of REC.
Correct. The global equivalent, mostly in North America and other regions, are renewable energy credits, or RECs. Same basic principle, different markets, different acronyms.
Got it. So bringing it back to the listener, why should you care about these GOs or RECs?
Well, because if you've ever actively chosen a green electricity package from your utility provider,
yeah, many people do.
or if you see companies, big brands, or even local businesses claiming they run on 100% renewable energy, this system, these guarantees of origin, are the mechanism behind that claim. It's how that greenness is actually tracked, verified, and accounted for. It's not just marketing fluff. There's a system.
Okay, so GOs are clearly important. They underpin green energy claims. But managing them sounds like a whole different story based on our sources. Not simple at all for the producers.
Oh, far from simple. The picture painted is one of just a significant administrative burden. Lots and lots of paperwork.
How so? What makes it so burdensome?
Well, it's described as manual, first off.
Yeah.
And incredibly fragmented. Think about it. You've got renewable assets maybe across different countries in Europe.
Yeah.
You're dealing with over 30 different national registries, different platforms, different logins, different rules for each one.
30. Wow. Okay, that sounds like a nightmare just keeping track.
It is. It's hugely time-consuming.
Yeah.
And honestly, for many producers, especially smaller ones, it's often a neglected task. They're focused on, running their power plant, not wrestling with certificate bureaucracy. It just eats up time and resources.
And the sources had some pretty wild anecdotes, didn't they, about how manual it can get?
They really did. Like the example of needing to send physical paper documents by post in Poland just to get your GOs issued, physical paper.
You're kidding. In this day and age.
Apparently not. Or, in Germany, having to manually report your meter readings every single month to the registry just to claim your GOs. Monthly manual data entry.
That sounds like something from the 90s, not for a modern energy system.
Right. And that other surprising detail from the interview transcript about the capacity trader. Remember that?
Oh, yeah, the negative prices thing.
Exactly. Electricity prices dip below zero. The producer wants to stop feeding power to the grid to avoid losing money. But the system isn't automated enough to handle that nuance easily.
So what happened?
The trader managing the connection sent an email telling the producer, hey, you should probably go and manually shut down your machine now.
An email to shut down a power generating unit because of market prices? That's incredibly inefficient.
It just highlights how much manual intervention and, frankly, clunky processes are still embedded in parts of this system.
And this inefficiency, this administrative headache, it must have a real financial impact on the producers, right? It's not just annoying paperwork.
Absolutely. The sources point this out very clearly. It has a huge financial toll. Get this. One source estimates that around 30% of renewable energy producers aren't even selling their GOs at all.
30%. Just letting them expire. That's literally leaving money on the table.
Money left on the floor, as the source put it. And even for the larger producers, the ones who are trying to sell their GOs, they can still lose up to 60%, 60, of potential GO revenue.
60% lost revenue. Why? Just because the paperwork is hard, or is there more to it?
It's a combination. It's partly the admin burden, yes, but it's also about the market structure itself. Why is it so hard to sell these things efficiently?
Okay, tell me about the market structure.
Well, fundamentally, it's an OTC market, over the counter. There's no single central stock exchange for GOs where you just list them and get the current market price instantly.
Ah, okay. So it's not like trading shares.
Not at all. Deals are bilateral. They're negotiated one-on-one between a producer and a buyer. This means custom contracts for each deal, more paperwork, manual back and forth for transactions.
Right. And that sounds like it would make finding the best price really difficult, especially if you're a smaller producer.
Exactly. Price discovery is a major challenge. If you're a small solar farm, how do you know what a fair price is today? Who are all the potential buyers across Europe? You probably don't have a big network or the time to constantly negotiate. And flip it around, if you're a big buyer needing millions of GOs, do you really want to deal with hundreds of tiny producers, each with slightly different paperwork and small volumes? It's inefficient for them too. They prefer larger aggregated blocks.
Okay, so you've got this valuable certificate, the Vubigo, but it's trapped behind layers of bureaucracy, multiple systems, and this opaque, difficult to navigate OTC market structure.
You've got it. That's the core problem.
And this is exactly where Soldera comes in, right? This is the problem they decided to tackle.
Precisely. They looked at this whole messy picture and said, we can fix this with technology. They built an AI-powered platform specifically designed to cut through that administrative jungle and bridge the gaps in the market.
AI-powered. So it's not just simple automation. It's smarter. How does it work? Does it just get rid of all that paperwork and logins?
That's the goal. Their core promise is automating the entire GO management lifecycle, pretty much end to end.
The entire thing.
Yeah. So from the moment the renewable energy is produced and the registry, technically issues the certificate, the platform handles the registration process, deals with the ongoing paperwork and communication with those 30-plus registries. It identifies potential buyers, facilitates the actual transactions, handles the invoicing, generates reports for the producer, ensures compliance. Basically, all the time-consuming stuff.
Wow. Okay, so it takes that burden off the producer's shoulders.
Completely. Festin Verjerku, the CEO, he put it quite directly in the interview we saw. He said, their AI-driven platform completely eliminates this administrative burden while delivering unprecedented market access and maximizing profits for producers.
Eliminate the burden, maximize the profits. Sounds like a good pitch. And their website breaks down those benefits, right? I remember seeing things like...
Yeah, they list them quite clearly.
Automate, save your team's time, obviously. Maximize returns by selling aggregated volumes and accessing more buyers. Stabilize revenue using forward selling strategies. Consolidate getting unified reporting across all your assets, even if they're in different countries.
All sounds pretty compelling for a producer struggling with this stuff.
Yeah, and it leads to what they call optimized revenues. Getting better prices because you're part of a bigger pool, getting access to markets you couldn't reach before, maybe qualifying for premium eco-labels, and securing more reliable cash flow with those forward sales.
And the efficiency gain is huge.
Yeah.
They claim up to 95% reduction in the time spent managing GOs.
95%? That's massive. Plus, that shared success model, they only make money if the producer successfully sells their geos.
Right. Commission only on successful transactions. So their interests are directly aligned with the producer getting the best possible outcome. No upfront fees, just a share of the success.
So for the producer, the process becomes, what, they just set their goals?
Pretty much. The idea is the producer defines their strategy on the platform, things like, I don't want to sell below this price, or I want to sell this much volume each quarter. Then Soldera's platform takes over, automates all those complex interactions, the sales, the compliance checks, the registry transactions, all happening in the background. The producer just sees the results, hopefully higher prices for their GOs with way less effort.
Okay, let's dig into how they actually deliver those better results. You mentioned aggregation and market access. How does pooling these producers together really get them potentially up to 3 times better results, like one source mentioned?
Right, that 3 times better figure is striking. It really boils down to the power of aggregation. Soldera isn't just a software platform, it's also building a community, a collective of producers. They represent over 3,000 individual renewable energy production units across Europe now. And that includes some pretty significant clients, names like Utilitas Wind, Baltcap Infrastructure Fund, Cumos Energy, Vestman, Merido, Sunsa. These aren't just tiny rooftop solar installations, though they help those too.
So they're bringing together thousands of generation points.
Exactly. And by combining the Jugo volumes from all these members, Soldera creates a much, much larger, more significant position in the market. Stenver put it simply in the interview. By being together, by being aggregated, you have volumes. Bigger volumes get you better deals. It's classic market leverage.
Strength in numbers.
Precisely. He mentioned they moved something like 70 gigawatt hours of GOs just last month. That kind of volume makes the big international buyers sit up and take notice. They'd much rather do one large deal with Soldera than hundreds of tiny ones.
So a small producer joins Soldera, and suddenly their maybe modest volume is part of this huge offering that attracts serious buyers and better prices.
That's the core idea. That aggregation gives them access to Soldera's extensive network of international buyers, corporate buyers, utilities, trading houses. They get competitive offers and market opportunities they simply wouldn't see on their own.
And it's not just about getting a price, but getting a good price consistently. You mentioned smart trading strategies.
Yes, that's another key part. The GIGO market, as we said, is volatile. Prices can swing wildly. Trying to time the market perfectly, selling only at the peak, it's incredibly difficult, maybe impossible consistently.
Yeah, sounds like gambling.
It can be. So Soldera often recommends strategies to smooth that out. A popular one is dollar cost average selling.
Like in investing.
Exactly like that. Instead of trying to guess the peak, you just systematically sell a certain portion of your GOs at regular intervals, say every month or every 2 months. Over time, you capture the average market price. It's less risky and more predictable than trying to be a market timer.
Makes sense. Takes the emotion out of it.
Right. They also help facilitate forward selling. So producers can lock in a price today for GOs they will produce in the future, maybe next year. This gives them predictable revenue and hedges against potential price drops.
Okay, so better access, smarter selling strategies. Anything else boosting revenue? Eco-labels.
Yep, that's another lever. Certain buyers pay a premium for GOs that meet specific environmental standards, often certified by recognized eco-labels. Soldera helps producers navigate that qualification process, potentially unlocking those premium prices for their GOs.
So you put all that together, the aggregated volume attracting big buyers, or the wider market access, the smart selling strategies, the potential eco-label premiums. That's how you get to potentially triple the results compared to, say, a producer who wasn't selling effectively before.
Exactly. It depends on the producer's starting point, of course. If they were already quite sophisticated, the uplift might be smaller. But for those 30% leaving money on the floor, or those losing 60% due to inefficiency, the potential gain is huge.
And that success fee model reinforces it. Soldera only wins big if the producer wins big on their geo sales.
Precisely. Their incentives are aligned.
Okay, let's zoom out again. Why is this all happening now? What are the bigger market forces at play? We mentioned volatility.
Yeah, the market is definitely dynamic. That volatility, as the sources point out, isn't just market structure. It's also linked to the inherent variability of renewable energy itself.
Like weather patterns.
Exactly. If it's unusually rainy in Scandinavia, you get a flood of hydropower GOs from Norway, and prices might drop. If there's a drought, supply tightens, prices can spike. We saw those examples 8 per megawatt hour last summer.
And now less than €1. That's a crazy swing compared to 10 cents a few years back.
Wild swings. Navigating that is tough. But crucially, despite that volatility, the underlying demand for GEOs is just growing and growing.
What's driving that demand so strongly?
Several factors converging. ESG commitments from corporations are a massive driver, and they keep getting stronger. Think about energy-hungry sectors like AI and data centers. They need to demonstrate renewable energy use.
Right, their energy footprint is huge.
Huge. Then you have new regulations popping up, grants requiring proof of green energy via GEOs. And the big one coming is the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, CSRD, in Europe.
CSRD, what's that impact?
It's going to demand much more detailed and standardized reporting from thousands more companies about their environmental impact, including energy sourcing. That transparency requirement is widely expected to significantly boost demand for verifiable green energy, meaning more demand for GEOs.
Okay, so regulation forcing more transparency.
Yep. Plus, things like the burgeoning green hydrogen industry producing green hydrogen requires proof that the electricity used was renewable, again, via GEOs. And even asset managers are under pressure to prove the sustainability of the companies and infrastructure in their investment portfolios.
So demand is coming from all angles: corporate targets, regulation, new industries, finance.
It really is. It's a confluence of factors pushing demand up.
What about the future of the market itself? Any improvements on the horizon? I remember reading about a potential shift to hourly GEOs.
Yes, that's a really significant potential development mentioned in the sources. Right now, GEOs typically represent energy produced over a whole year or maybe a month. They lack granularity.
So you could use a GEO generated from solar power in July to claim you used green energy on a dark night in December.
Exactly. That's the criticism, the potential for greenwashing. The move towards hourly GEOs aims to fix that. It would mean matching energy consumption with renewable generation on an hour-by-hour basis.
Wow, that sounds much more accurate, but also much more complex to track.
Absolutely. It would provide much better proof of actual real-time renewable energy use and would really reward technologies like battery storage that can shift green energy to when it's needed. The sources see it as a positive, necessary step for the market's credibility and impact, though the registries might not be technically ready just yet. It requires a big system upgrade.
But it's seen as the direction of travel.
It seems to be. The upcoming revision of the EU's Renewable Energy Directive, RED, is expected to look closely at how renewable share is assessed, and that could push things towards more granular, possibly hourly, GEOs.
A move to hourly tracking. That really ups the complexity again. Seems like a platform like Soldera's, built on automation and data, would be even more essential in that kind of world.
Definitely. Managing hourly matching across multiple assets and registries manually, forget it. You'd need sophisticated automation.
Let's shift gears slightly and talk about the founders. Who are the people who saw this problem and decided to build Soldera?
So the company was co-founded by two people, Stenver Jerku, who's the CEO, and Al William Tamsar, the CPO, Chief Product Officer.
Okay, Stenver Jerku, what's his story?
He's got a pretty impressive track record as a serial tech entrepreneur. The sources mention he's raised over $25 million in venture capital across his ventures, had startup exits. Seems he started programming very young. He was actually an early employee at a company called Glia.
Glia, the customer interaction platform, and they became a unicorn. Right?
That's the one. He was there during that high growth phase. Then he moved more into the climate space. He co-founded Egronom.
Egronom AI for agriculture, climate tech. I've heard of them.
Yep. And after that, he co-founded Solid World, which was focused on the carbon credit trading market. So his background really hits AI, climate tech, energy, computer science, even economics. Quite a blend.
Okay, a deep tech and climate background. What about Al William Tamsar, the CPO?
Al's background seems really focused on untangling complex systems, which makes sense for this market. Academically, computer science, specializing in data science and product management. He worked in data science consulting, then joined Egronom, crucially, as a product manager and data scientist.
So he worked with Stenver at Egronom.
Yes, that's where they first teamed up. He was also the co-founder and CPO at Solid World alongside Stenver. So his expertise is really in product management, systems thinking, data science, and climate finance.
So they knew each other well before Soldera. How long have they worked together?
The sources say about 10 years now. Apparently, they first met when Stenver hired Al at Egronom. There's a fun anecdote about Al explaining neural networks on a napkin during the interview process.
Neural networks on a napkin. I love it. That suggests a good dynamic from the start.
It seems so. Stenver actually described their partnership as yin and yang in the interview. They covered different but essential skills needed to build a company, especially in a complex space like this. That decade of working together builds a lot of trust.
And they share a common drive.
Very much so. Both are described as being deeply motivated by environmental impact, by tackling climate change.
Mhm.
They talk about it as their life work, constantly looking for ways to have massive impact now. That shared passion seems core to their partnership.
That drive is key for startup resilience. How did they pivot from carbon credits at Solid World specifically to guarantees of origin?
Well, the sources indicate that winding down Solid World was a tough but mutual decision. They felt the market timing for what they were doing there was simply off.
So, a pragmatic decision based on market reality.
Exactly. But instead of just stopping, they did this incredibly rigorous analysis. They systematically look at every environmental asset class they could think of.
Every single one.
That's what it sounds like. They were searching for an asset that could be commodified, standardized, and crucially, where the market was already large and growing fast enough for them to make a significant immediate impact. They didn't want to wait years for a market to mature.
And that deep dive pointed them towards GOs.
Yes, they saw the existing scale, the regulatory drivers, the rapid growth, and the inefficiencies we've discussed. It ticked the boxes for where they could apply their tech skills for major impact relatively quickly.
And how did they actually start building Soldera? Wasn't there another hands-on story there?
Yeah, the wine and solar panels story. Instead of just theorizing, they went directly to friends who had installed solar panels.
Took wine.
Took wine, apparently. It basically said, hey, let us try and register and trade these Jago things for you.
Haha, brilliant. Like customer discovery with friends and wine.
Exactly. By doing it themselves, manually, for those first few friends, they experienced all the pain points firsthand. The confusing registries, the paperwork, the difficulty finding buyers, the low prices. That direct experience clearly shaped the platform they then built.
That's smart, validating the problem by living it. And what about their growth? How did they get those 3,000 plus units on board?
A lot of it, interestingly, has been through referrals, word of mouth.
Really?
Yeah.
Producers recommending it to other producers?
Yes, because the model itself encourages it. When a producer joins Soldera, they benefit from the aggregated volume. So if they convince another producer to join, the pool gets bigger, the leverage increases, and potentially everyone gets better deals.
Ah, a positive feedback loop. Network effects built into the model.
Precisely. So while they do traditional outreach, emails, and so on, especially for very large producers who need more handholding, a significant chunk of their growth in countries where they're active, started with Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, now expanding into Finland, Germany, Netherlands, Sweden, has been organic, driven by producers seeing the value and telling others.
That kind of referral growth is a strong signal that you're genuinely solving a painful problem in a way the market values. So pulling it all together, when you look at Stenver and Al, their history, their approach, what makes them seem like such a potentially great founding team for this specific challenge?
Well, several things really stand out from the sources, I think. First, that long history and trust. 10 years working together through different ventures, successes, and failures. That's invaluable. They know how to work together, how to disagree, how to navigate tough spots. You can't buy that kind of shared experience.
Absolutely. Essential for the startup roller coaster.
Second, those complementary skills. You've got Stenver's broad tech entrepreneurship, AI vision, and market strategy, combined with Al's deep expertise in product design, data science, and building complex systems. It covers the crucial angles, the what and the how.
The yin and yang they mentioned.
Exactly. Third, their experience across multiple startups, including a unicorn journey at Glia and the hard lessons from Solid World. They've seen scaling, they've seen pivots, they understand venture capital, they know what it takes. That breadth of experience is rare.
Learning from both wins and losses.
For sure. Fourth, the deep domain expertise they built up through Agronom and Solid World. They didn't just jump into energy finance cold. They understand climate tech, carbon markets, the nuances of environmental assets, and likely the producer's mindset.
Right. They speak the language.
Fifth, that shared vision and drive for impact. Their genuine passion for tackling climate change isn't just talk. It seems to be the core motivator. That likely resonates strongly with the renewable energy producers they serve.
Builds authenticity and alignment.
Sixth, their rigorous approach. The way they systematically analyze the market after Solid World to find the right opportunity rather than just jumping at the next shiny thing shows discipline.
Methodical.
Yeah. And seventh, that hands-on validation. Starting by helping friends with solar panels wasn't just a cute story. It showed they were willing to get their hands dirty. Truly understand the user's pain before building the tech.
Grounded in reality.
And finally, the way they've managed to build community and leverage referrals for growth. It suggests they're not just building software, but a solution that producers genuinely value and want to share. It speaks volumes about product-market fit.
Okay, so quite a compelling combination of factors suggesting they're well-equipped for this complex challenge. Right, so we've covered a lot of ground today. We've unpacked these crucial, if complex, things called guarantees of origin. We've seen the, frankly, surprising administrative hurdles and market fragmentation that renewable energy producers have been facing.
Real headaches, really slowing things down.
Yeah, and we've explored how Soldera's AI platform and their aggregation strategy aims to cut right through that bureaucracy, aiming to significantly boost producer revenues and, in turn, help accelerate the whole green energy transition.
And I think we've also seen the depth of experience and the real commitment behind the founders, Stenver and Al. Their journey, including that pivot from Solid World and their very hands-on start, really highlights their resilience and their deep understanding of the market they're tackling. That founder story matters.
Definitely. Hopefully this deep dive has given you, our listener, a much clearer picture of this important but maybe often overlooked corner of the green energy world and the role technology and companies like Soldera are playing in making it work better.
And maybe one final thought to leave you with, building on that discussion about the future. Consider that potential shift to hourly guarantees of origin. If that happens, it could fundamentally change the game, right? It would force a much tighter link between green energy claims and actual real-time generation, really rewarding storage and flexibility.
True. No more hiding winter usage behind summer solar geos.
Exactly. But it also raises a really important question for the whole system. How will we truly prove and value green energy use during those inevitable hours, days, or even weeks when the sun isn't shining locally and the wind isn't blowing? What does real-time green actually mean then?
A fascinating and complex question to ponder as this whole landscape keeps evolving. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. Keep exploring and keep asking questions.